Before training camp happens, before preseason games happen, I want to take a real look at what the Chicago Bulls roster and where it's at heading into the 2026-27 season, and why I think this team is a lot more interesting, a lot more balanced, and has more talent than what it's had in a long time. We're longer, we're more athletic, we have more upside, we have a more clear direction as well, and Caleb Wilson is going to really shock a lot of NBA fans as well as how good he's going to be, I think, right away. You have Modest Buzelis looking to make that third-year leap. Josh Giddey has the roster around him that fits him better than anything we've had in Chicago for a while, but we still do need to be honest. This is still a development team. And through that developmental process that this team's going to go through, there's a lot of different outcomes and avenues that we can end up at the end of the 2026-27 seasons. With the half-court offensive problems, the shooting concerns of this team as well, and the consistent point of attack defense. On today's episode, we're going to break down the Chicago Bulls' biggest hurdles projectedly heading into the 2026-27 season and more right after this. What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button, man. We're trying to get to 50,000 subscribers. We're going to only do that with you guys. About 42% of you guys that watch the channel every day have not subscribed to the channel. What you doing? Go ahead and hit that subscribe button. In exchange for that, I'll be giving you guys the best daily NBA and basketball content you guys will find anywhere around. With that said, let's go ahead and get into it, man. So I think the place that I want to start off with this is Summer League. Did Summer League actually change anything for the Chicago Bulls? And I want to be clear. No, it did not, right? So, you know, I've said this many times before about the good and the bad. Summer League is more of a showcase. It's not to develop anybody. It's not to have these hardline takes in regards to anybody. But I will say this, that it did provide some questions that we're going to see how they're answered in training camp. I think that's the thing. It changed nothing overall for the season, but it has provided some questions. Number one, Caleb Wilson looks like he could be ready for a real role on this team, and more so than just the young upstart rookie. Like, you could have to, not saying run everything through him, but at the end of the day, when you look at it, his scoring, 35 points, 19, 19, and 21 points. He consistently scored. He consistently rebounded the ball well. He showed his defensive playmaking and the acumen that he's going to have there as well. Then I think also, like, the way that he adjusted to how defenses adjusted to him were there. The turnovers, though, were crazy. The free throw percentage was crazy and not in a good way as well, right? But I think when you look at it, coming into training camp, how much of that is legitimate? And the shooting, right, for Caleb Wilson, how much of the shooting is going to be legitimate right away in the NBA level? And we'll see that. The next question that it provided the Chicago Bulls is that he looks less ready than people were expecting. When you draft an upperclassman at pick number 15, you're expecting that them to have more translatable skills right away. Swain's defense, his rebounding, and his passing did remain probably the strongest things you can say that you can take away from Summer League form. But at the end of the day, the dude shot the ball like ass cheeks. Like, it's just no way around it. He shot the ball like ass. And I think that, you know, maybe the increased ball handling role provided that or whatever else. You know, it doesn't change his long-term potential. And I want to be clear there. I know there are going to be some Bulls fans in the comments that are ready to riot here and that, but it doesn't change his long-term potential yet. But if these struggles continue in training camp and in preseason, that's when you have to start lowering that ceiling a little bit for him. And I think for Noa Essengue, it provided that he's still a developmental project. For anybody who thought, you know, that because he had a year that he was going to come back and just be ready to go and not still be a project. No, we knew he was going to be, a project. Thiago Splitter moved him from the starting role to a bench role. And, you know, because he wanted to see more from Noa Essengue. And so Noah's still going to be a project. And then you have your two-way guys. And like I said with these guys before, they should be coming into camp with the idea of, you know, our two-guard spot is thin. I'm taking that spot, right? Not the starter. That's, of course, going to Norman Powell. But between Jaylin Sellers, right? Donovan Atwell, who I think Atwell is a less complete player. He's really just a shooter. But Donovan Atwell, right? These guys should be coming in to training camp trying to show and prove that they deserve a role. And that's really the biggest things you can take away from training camp. But I think when you look at it, the Bulls' biggest projected, I'm going to say projected hurdles right now, because, hey, a crazy shooting, progression from Modest Buzelis can fix that. Caleb Wilson being much better than advertised from shooting can fix that. Josh Giddey taking his shooting a step further than what he even did last year at over 37% could fix that. But right now, shooting and half-court spacing is still projected one of the Bulls' biggest problems with this. Norman Powell is the only projected starter right now who enters the season as a proven high-volume NBA shooter. That's it. Buzelis improved, but he's still very inconsistent at times, even based off what last year. And Giddey improved drastically as well, right? But at the same time, Josh Giddey's role is going to be more of getting everybody else involved. But right now, Josh Giddey, Norman Powell, probably your best shooters in your starting line. Well, most consistent shooters in your starting line. Norman Powell's the best. Modest and Caleb, they're going to have to prove. Now, I would say this, if both those guys take the necessary step, then maybe this goes from the number one problem maybe further down because you still have a lack of shooting on your bench and other spots on your roster. But at least in that starting lineup, the shooting, the half-court spacing is going to be a big thing. When you look at the spacing as well, right? Any lineup containing three of, right? So any three of these players, Josh Giddey, Nic Claxton, Dailyn Swain, Okoro, Noa Essengue, Leonard Miller. If you have any of those three players into your lineup, it's going to be a tough shooting lineup, right? So I think, watching how Thiago Splitter balances that. Now, one thing about Thiago Splitter's offense is that it does create a lot of open three-point shots, so he's going to be there, but defenses are going to go under screens a lot against the Chicago Bulls early. They're going to try to crowd that paint, and so what the Bulls do in that regard is going to be interesting to see, right? I think that overall, too, staggering, how much you stagger of like Modest and some of the other players in regards to that is going to be interesting, right? Because you still want to leave switchable defenders out there, but we'll see what's going to happen in regards to that. We'll see what happens. So we'll see. But the next one is that who creates offense when it stalls? Like when the offense starts stalling or shots not falling, who's going to create that offense? We know Josh Giddey can organize an offense. There's no question about that. He knows how to advance the ball. He knows how to create opportunities for others. He's one of the best in the NBA at doing it, only second to Nikola Jokic in regards to that. Norman Powell fits that moniker of a guy that can go out and get you a bucket, right? But I think when you have a drive that stalls or a possession that stalls and you're in that late shot clock, you're still going to have an opportunity for who's going to be that guy that can put the offense on their back and go out and get a bucket. I think Norman Powell's right now the best current option to get that done. But at 33 years old, of course, you want to see some other the younger guys come in and start that. Buzelis has the size, the scoring upside. His handle as well has improved, and his ability to drive and get to the bucket is going to help with that. Caleb Wilson, we've seen him grow as a shot creator already. It's shown flashes in regards to it. But again, the turnovers could be a little bit of a thing, especially in your younger and you're adjusting to NBA speed and physicality. So you have that part of it, and you have that question. The thought process is that Dailyn Swain, with how he scored in college, right, and being able to score in isolation, could fit that moniker of a go out and get you a bucket type person. But again, with this summer league, you're not really betting on that, right? So you're going to hope that it's a combination of Caleb Wilson, Buzelis, that they grow into those areas, right? That, a guy like, even Jalen Smith with his ability to space the floor can be some of that. But this is where Jaylin Sellers could find a role for himself as well. So, and we'll see. And even though I'm not the biggest fan of him too, this could be a place where Rob Dillingham steps up with his ability to score as well. So we'll see that part of it, right? Then the point of attack defense. The Bulls have some really good defenders on this team now. We should be a much better defensive team than what we've been for years now. You have Nic Claxton, who provides the rim protection. He provides the switchability as well. He can go out there on the perimeter. Josh Giddey and Norman Powell aren't likely to be an elite defensive backcourt. Norman Powell's a really good team defender, but not like a lockdown one-on-one defender or something like that, right? Like there's some defensive tools there. And of course, we know Modest and Caleb, they possess that young, switchable defensive mode that you like in regards to that one. But so that puts, outside of that in your starting lineup, it puts really big, pressure on one of Isaac Okoro. This could be Patrick Williams. Jalen Smith's not really a great one-on-one defender either. He's a really good weak side defender, but his weak side defense becomes even more important. Can Dailyn Swain become that? Leonard Miller, who's a solid two-way player. You're looking at that next player that steps up as that second wave of point of attack defense for this team, and whoever does that is good. The Bulls allowed 121.5 points per game last season. We were 28th in the NBA in that area. So there's no doubt our defense needs to take a huge improvement and a step further. And we'll see how it gets to. It comes down to screen navigation, transition defense, and communication. That's why on yesterday's episode, I talked so much about Nic Claxton and his ability to be a defensive quarterback for this team, because I think that's going to make a lot of difference for this team as well. Number 4, physicality and defensive rebounding, right? Our starting front court is long, and we get that. You have Modest, Caleb, Claxton. The thing that's a question about all those guys, they're all very light players for their position, right? They're all very light players. And so, the physicality, teams are going to try to muck up the game and become very physical with the Chicago Bulls, and how well they deal with that, especially early on, is going to be telling. How do the Bulls deal with the larger teams? This is where the Jalen Smiths, the Zach Collins, right? Even the Patrick Williams can become even more handy for this Bulls team, the Leonard Millers as well. But you're gonna have to be out there and do that, and it's gonna be an adjustment for this team as we go on, right? Number 5 question for this team. It becomes about, there's so many young forwards on this team that don't have defined roles that somebody's gonna get left out. Between Modest Buzelis, Caleb Wilson, Noa Essengue, Leonard Miller, Patrick Williams, if you want to throw him in there as well, Isaac Okoro, Jalen Smith, somebody's not getting minutes on this team. There's just a reality of it. I know P. Will has his fans and the fan base and stuff like that still think this is the year that P. Will finally breaks out. Tiago's going to unlock P. Will, but he's going to have to show it. And that goes for everybody in this roster as well, right? Modest and Caleb are going to be the starters. They've earned that role. That's great. Everybody else behind that are all jockeying for position. And despite how Leonard Miller finished at the end of the season in March basketball, not against NBA starters, he's not walking into the season as the first forward off the bench either, right? That's probably going to go to Jalen Smith, depending on how many minutes Jalen has to play at the center as well, on how healthy Zach Collins is. But there are a lot of young, talented forwards that have potential on this team. Who's going to get left out? The easy case right now to look at it, who's left out, is Noa Essengue, Dailyn Swain, right? Those guys are probably going to be left out unless they really prove something in training camp. But even if with those 2 guys out, you're still not going to be able to play 6 forwards with 2 forward spots. Somebody's going to get left out. Splitter just can't play everybody. So they're going to have to determine what combinations of players fit, rather than give players minutes based off draft position, salary, or anything else based off history. You're going to have to determine that in training camp for this team, and we'll see how that's going to happen in regards to that one as well. And then one of the biggest things for this team is how you balance development with trying to win, right? Tiago Splitter has said it. Bryson Graham has said it. Everybody has said it in this organization. This is not a team that's not trying to come in and compete every single game. They are going to try to win every single game. And despite what some people will tell you, that is actually what's best for development, is trying to win these games, trying to be in these games. That is what is best for development in the short term and in the long term. But they're really going to have to balance those things to determine, or the way that they balance that is going to determine a lot about how this season ends up working out for this team, right? Of course, you look at it. You added Norman Powell, you added Nic Claxton, and those guys are going to help the young players develop, right? But at the same time, young players and young teams usually find it a struggle to close games. That's going to be something that is probably going to be there with this Bulls team. They're going to struggle to close games. There's going to be a lot of games that are close for 3 quarters, but they don't get over that hump to close them, at least early in the season. So how much of that can you get over with this season, right? I think when you look at it, like, Tiago was hired, part of his reputation for connecting and developing players. That is why he's here on the Chicago Bulls, on the bench, being the coach of the Chicago Bulls. So I think when you look at it, right, this could mean that Dailyn Swain does go to the Windy City Bulls despite being the 15th overall pick. That Patrick Williams is losing minutes despite his contract. That Rob Dillingham is sitting because he's not playing and performing at the level consistently that you need him to. Noa Essengue could spend extra extended time out of the rotation and in the Windy City Bulls as well, right? And then you have to look at Zach Collins, Jalen Smith, the balance between those 2 players as well. There's going to be a lot of balancing in regards to this one, right? I think when you look at the Bulls comparative to the Eastern Conference, which is a conversation that we have to have here, is that you look at it, the East became even tougher at the top. You got New York, who's entering the season as the defending champion. They always had a deep roster. You got Miami, who added Giannis Antetokounmpo, and they have depth concerns. They have some shooting concerns with that team, but you got Giannis, you got Bam, you got Eric Spoelstra. That team's going to be very sound defensively as well. Philly, they added Jaylen Brown and LeBaron Fillon. Like, this is going to be a team that has a lot to go for itself this year, even if Joel Embiid isn't fully healthy all the time. Detroit, they added Isaiah Joe, and then you have Atlanta that added Aaron Wiggins and Lou Dort from OKC, a championship caliber team, right? So this creates an opportunity in the East where you see it in, like, there are so many teams that have stronger cases to be winners, and that's even before you get to the bottom teams. New York, Miami, Indiana, Philly, Cleveland, Detroit, Atlanta. That's 7 teams right there. That's 7 teams. And unless injuries are a thing for that team, for like Indiana, what if Tyrese Halliburton isn't himself right away, much like Jason Tatum was, right? And keep in mind, like I didn't even mention Boston in those teams, right? So, Boston, who still has Tatum, yeah, they added Paul George and flipped out Jaylen Brown for him, but that's still a team that's coached by Joe Mazzulla. That's still a deep team that has the history of how they played. And so I'm not even getting into some of the fringe teams in there, the playing teams. New York, Miami, Indiana, Philly, Cleveland, Detroit, Atlanta, and Boston. That's 8 teams right there. It's probably your top 8 teams in the Eastern Conference, right? And then you also have Orlando. You have Toronto, right? So you have a number of teams that possess veteranship, playoff foundations already. And so the Bulls getting into the play-in is going to be even tougher this year. The East is about to be a dog this upcoming season, right? So I think when you look at it for the Chicago Bulls, there are 3 different projections that I have for the Bulls. On the high end, right? The very high end of it, between 41 and 44 wins. That's if everything goes well. That is modest hits a 3rd-year leap. Caleb Wilson looks like the rookie of the year. Josh Giddey takes a step forward. Norman Powell's perfect for us. And we found that balance on the bench. And even then, you're probably still looking at 8th or 9th in the Eastern Conference. Then you have the most realistic range for the Bulls, between 35, 38 wins. Maybe you can get 10th in there and flirt with the play-in, but you're probably being around 12th if that ends up being the case. We're looking at some of these. And again, this is all based off not injuries and stuff like that. The low end, 29 to 33 wins. The low end for the Chicago Bulls team. And this would come from, of course, you have your young player hurdles. You don't close out games early on. You have so much of a new team, a new head coach, that maybe you have some regards into that one. But I think either if the Bulls can finish between 37 and 45 wins, somewhere in that range, that would mark a real improvement, because last year we finished 31 and 51. And that's with all the things. Now, we're not trying to act like the rebuild's finished, which I think some Bulls fans are trying to get into. The rebuild's not nearly finished yet, but we are approaching that. And so I think the Bulls can approach, if we want to get to that high end, the 42 win, the high end of this, a few things have to happen. Midas has to have a huge year 3 lead. Caleb Wilson has to become a positive starter for you right away and probably be the rookie of the year. Norman Powell remains healthy and efficient. Josh Giddey's shooting holds over from last season. And Nic Claxton returns to the high-end defensive player of the year candidate that he was before. Also, you're looking at some swing skills coming off the bench, right? Does one of Swain, Okoro, Patrick Williams actually become a viable 2-way wing off the bench for the Chicago Bulls team? Does Rob Dillingham or anybody else step up as the proven scorer off the bench for this team? And also, I think how Thiago manages the pace with this team and how we get to that point, right? But we could remain close to the 30 wins if the starting lineup doesn't have enough shooting. We don't have enough shooting over the course of the roster. Let's say we have some significant injuries over the course of this season. If Caleb Wilson experiences a perfectly normal rookie inconsistency, which is the thing that could be there. If Nic Claxton continues his defensive decline, it could drop the Bulls some as well. So I think when you look at this, some of the Bulls players that are facing the toughest training camp evaluations are, one, Dailyn Swain. Dailyn Swain, his training camp evaluation is going to be hugely important, because the things that he needs to demonstrate for this Bulls team to be a player that can actually play minutes for us right away is he has to be more confident. His catch and shooting has to be much better. His handling pressure when he handles the ball has to be better. His defensive discipline has to be better. His defensive abilities have to be better. Basically, he has to be everything better than what he was in Summer League, right? Then I also think Rob Dillingham faces a very rough evaluation. You have Tre Jones and Josh Giddey ahead of you, right? Which is perfectly fine. So your role as the 3rd point guard most than likely is cool, but what do you do with that one, right? Can you push Tre Jones for some backup minutes? I don't have very high faith in it, but can you do it? I think what Dillingham has to show in training camp is a more consistency, right? With the greater opportunity, more consistency, make fewer mistakes with your turnovers, right? Be an improved ball handler and assist guy, and let your shooting come to you kind of more naturally there. And provide efficient scoring. We don't need the huge volume scoring for Rob Dillingham. Can you provide some consistent scoring? If you can do those things, it's great. And keep in mind, I'm not the biggest Rob Dillingham fan, but there's a chance, and I'm not going to act like as a young player he can't still improve. Noa Essengue, huge training camp evaluation for him. Are you an NBA rotational player, or are you a Windy City Bull? That's really the biggest questions for there. How do you handle physicality? How do you play better when you have a point guard out there with you? Are you cutting? Are you rebounding? Are you blocking shots consistently well? Are you providing that switchable defense? Because I tell you what, like we talked about the need for point of attack defenders, if Noa Essengue can provide consistent defensive ability and performance on that side of the ball, he can definitely get into that. So we'll see there. And then Patrick Williams probably faces the most pressure than any veteran on this team. His salary is not going to secure him a role in the rotation. It's just not. He averaged 7 points, 3 rebounds last season, and that's not good. And you saw a player like Leonard Miller in the same position and opportunity play better than Patrick Williams down the stretch of that season. Now you have Modest. Now you have Caleb ahead of you. You have Leonard Miller that's going to be fighting for those minutes. You have Jalen Smith who's going to be fighting for those minutes. Patrick Williams, this is one of the most important offseasons of his career because for the first time, he is now playing for a different front office and a different head coach than what drafted him. So there is no more caveats given to Patrick Williams at all. And how do you provide what do you provide in a much lower usage and lower expectation season for you? That's going to be a big thing for Patrick Williams there, and we're going to see. And then Leonard Miller. Leonard Miller is an important evaluation in this also because, again, he pushes the other players. You don't need Noa Essengue to be a defensive presence for you right away if Leonard Miller's being a two-way player for you. You don't need Patrick Williams to all of a sudden try to turn around and be a different player for you if Leonard Miller is being a better two-way player for you. Leonard has the opportunity to be the guy that backs up both Modest and that backs up Caleb Wilson. And the rebounding that he brings, the defensive versatility, that corner three that he showed that he has last season, how much of what we saw from you in March last season can actually be a proven weapon from the start of this upcoming season for Leonard Miller? That's going to be a huge role and opportunity for this one also. And I'll say also another veteran that faces a tough training camp evaluation, Haize Okoro, because defense ain't just going to cut it for you. Now, we need defense, and that may be a reason for you to get some minutes in this team, but how do you do that? What do you do there? And we'll see. And then Jaylin Sellers, the last player that I'll talk about. He is the best two-way candidate to actually push for rotation minutes in this one. The defense that he talked about, the offense that he showed as well, scoring 24 points with 3 steals and 3 assists, like we saw the defensive versatility and the scoring upside that he had. Jaylin Sellers becomes an important player that for a team that lacks some shooting, lacks some scoring, and point of attack defense, Jaylin Sellers has the opportunity to come in here and shows that to some degree, he can bring all of that for the Chicago Bulls, and let's see what he happens and what he does in regards to that one. So we'll see. This is an important evaluation training camp for the Bulls. I can't wait to hear how it goes, who stands out, those type of things, and we're going to see. But it's going to be a fun season, I think, one way or another, because I think the brand of basketball that the Bulls are going to play is going to be much better, and let's see what they do with it. But that's going to do it for today's episode, man. I want to hear from you guys down below in the comment section. Who do you think faces the toughest training camp uphill battle? What do you think the biggest evaluations are going to be in training camp for players? And where do you have your projection based off right now before we see preseason and stuff like that? Where do you think this Bulls team can be this year? This is not a finished product of a team, but do you think they can contend for a playoff spot? Do you think with all the how much more tough the East is, this is going to be a team that fizzles out early? Let me know what you guys think on all that down below, man. Make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode or an upload. You can follow us at Bull Central Pod on every social media platform. You send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullcentralpod@gmail.com. And lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the #1 spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that is thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See you ready if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation